Dubai charges you $150 a night for a basic hotel room and calls it the affordable Gulf option. In Oman right now, $65 gets you a mountain view hotel, a full Wadi day trip costs $20, and the frankincense coffee you didn't order arrives anyway because that's just how they do hospitality here. The same $300 budget that buys you 4 nights in Dubai buys you 6 nights plus back-to-back adventures in Oman, and not a single person is fighting you for space at the entrance.
Welcome to Phil and H Travel, Is It Worth It? Today we're asking whether Oman, Muscat, and everything beyond it is the smartest travel decision you can make in the Gulf right now. Travel experts in 2026 are actively ranking it above Dubai on value, authenticity, and experience. Zero overtourism, genuinely untouched landscapes, luxury resorts at half the UAE price point. The only question is whether the window is still open or whether the 2026 tourism boom is already closing it.
Yeah, so the mission for you today is actually pretty simple on paper, but the execution is, well, it's incredibly complex.
Oh, absolutely.
We are essentially pulling apart the logistics, all the hidden costs and the absolute on-the-ground reality of Oman to see if it truly lives up to this massive hype. Like, is it really the ultimate contrarian Gulf destination?
Right, because the contrarian claim here is super fascinating. The whole argument is that the absolute best, most authentic spot in the Middle East isn't the one spending billions on marketing campaigns.
Right, or neon skyscrapers.
Exactly. It's the one that most travelers wrongly assume is just difficult to navigate or, simply dull.
Which couldn't be further from the truth. So we had this massive stack of data today. Architectural breakdowns, literal receipts, cultural analyses. We're going to tear open the financial matrix to show you exactly where every single dollar goes.
And we're also going to expose the tourist traps, right? Because there are traps that will actively drain your wallet if you aren't careful.
Oh, for sure. Plus, we'll explain exactly why the structural economics of Oman actually allow for this crazy value.
Right.
So if you're trying to figure out how to maximize a travel budget without sacrificing that feeling of genuine, uncrowded discovery, this deep dive is literally your blueprint.
It really is. And to understand this blueprint, we really have to start with the headline daily budgets because honestly, the numbers themselves almost look like a typo.
They really do.
Yeah, especially if you're used to traveling in the UAE or Qatar. So if you're looking at a low-end daily budget, like a lean backpacker-style footprint, you're looking at $44 per person per day.
$44, that's wild.
Right. And if you step up to a mid-range budget, which is, where the vast majority of travelers sit, you're looking at $117 per person per day.
Okay, so totally manageable.
Very. And then we have the luxury tier, where Oman genuinely just breaks the established models of global hospitality. A luxury footprint here sits between $247 and $458 per person per day.
Wow.
But, numbers in a vacuum are meaningless. We really have to look at the underlying mechanisms here, like why is a 5-star experience in Oman fundamentally cheaper than a 5-star experience a 4-hour drive away in Dubai? It all just comes down to the architecture of taxation.
Yeah, I actually really want to push on that for a second. Yeah. Because when I look at a luxury hotel, the raw materials, the marble, the high-end linens, the imported food, the staff, that all costs roughly the same, whether that building is sitting in Dubai or sitting in Muscat.
Exactly. The baseline costs are similar.
So how on earth can a room at the Chedi Muscat, which is literally an architectural masterpiece, cost between $390 and $650, while a comparable property in Dubai is demanding like $700 to $1,100? What is the invisible lever moving that price?
Well, the invisible lever is essentially the compounding tax structure.
Compounding, right?
Yeah. In Dubai, the sticker price of a room is heavily augmented by this cascading series of levies, and they're designed to fund the city's massive hyper-modern infrastructure.
And to pay for the tallest building in the world somehow.
Exactly. So when you book that Dubai room, you get hit with a 10% municipality fee, and that's immediately followed by a 10% service charge. And then you have the tourism dirham fee applied per night, and on top of all of that, a 5% value-added tax.
That's a lot of layers.
It really is. And because some of these are calculated sequentially, they compound. So a $700 room base rate just rapidly inflates past $850 by the time you actually hand over your credit card.
Right.
But Oman operates on a completely different philosophy. The Omani government relies on a flat 4% accommodation tourism levy. That is it. Full stop.
Wait, Yes, 4%.
Just 4%. The state is not aggressively extracting all this infrastructure funding directly from your hotel folio in the same way.
It kind of reminds me of the hidden fee structure on concert tickets,
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like, you see a ticket for $100, you think, okay, that fits my budget perfectly. And by the time you navigate to the checkout cart, you're paying $140 because of the so-called venue fee, the convenience fee, the breathing the air fee.
Seriously.
In Dubai, the sticker price is just an opening negotiation. But in Oman, you are given the actual price up front.
Totally.
But you also brought up the 2026 urgency in your opening. And this is where I need you to clarify something for me.
Sure.
Because we are looking at the Marriott Bonvoy EMA Ticket to Travel report, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it explicitly states that 79% of regional travelers are planning more trips, with Muscat trending at the top of their list.
Yep. That's what the data says.
So if 79% of the regional market is suddenly looking at Oman, why haven't the prices just skyrocketed to match the demand?
Well, it's because there is this lag between intent and infrastructure execution.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It creates this anomaly that we call the phantom zone. Like, people are actively planning these trips, the search volumes are absolutely spiking online, but the actual footfall at the major attractions remains at near zero crowd levels.
Oh, that's why?
Yeah, and you can see this so starkly when you compare the marquee attractions. Like, look at Wadi Shab, which is arguably Oman's most famous natural site.
Right, the big canyon gorge.
Exactly. It's stunning. But there is no timed entry system there. There's no capacity limit. There's no $40 ticket. You literally just walk into the canyon.
That's unheard of nowadays.
It really is. Or take Nizwa Fort, right? This beautifully preserved piece of 17th century military architecture. You pay 5 Omani Rial, which is about $13, and you just walk right in without waiting.
No queues at all.
None. Now contrast that mechanism with Dubai's Burj Khalifa. There, you are paying a minimum of $40, and the entire experience is basically an orchestrated queue. You wait 45 minutes just to access the elevator.
Right.
Oman simply hasn't installed that machinery of mass tourism yet.
But they are building that machinery right now, aren't they? I mean, if we look at the raw visitor gap, Oman brought in roughly 4.3 million international visitors recently, while Dubai processed 17 million.
It's a massive gap.
A massive chasm. But Oman isn't content with 4.3 million. They've initiated Vision 2040, which is this $13.6 billion tourism and infrastructure development framework.
Yep.
And $13.6 billion is not just putting up some new signs at the forts, right? That is earth-moving, landscape-altering capital. What exactly is that money physically doing to the country right now?
So that capital is literally physically closing the gap. They are executing massive luxury developments up on the Musandam Peninsula. They're carving new resorts right into the limestone of Jebel Akhdar, the Green Mountain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they are expanding the road networks to handle high-capacity coaches. The trajectory is just undeniably clear. Oman is actively constructing the exact infrastructure required to process those 17 million people.
Wow, okay.
That's why we keep insisting that the crowd-free luxury window is closing. Because if you wait until 2030 to take this trip, the Marriott Bonvoy data strongly suggests you will be paying Dubai prices and standing in Dubai lines while looking at the exact same Omani mountains.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The value exists precisely because the infrastructure is still just catching up to the marketing.
Exactly.
So if you, as a listener, want to slip through this window right now, we really need to map out the geography and the climate for you. Because planning an itinerary for Oman is not like planning a city break to Paris or Rome.
No, not at all.
You can't just book a central hotel and take the subway to all the sites. You really have to treat Oman as 3 entirely different countries simultaneously, purely based on the geographic zones.
Precisely. You really cannot treat Oman as a monolith. The geography totally dictates the logistics here.
Right.
So the first zone is Greater Muscat. This is the capital, but it doesn't really have a traditional dense downtown core like you might expect.
Yeah, it's really spread out.
Right. It's this sprawling 60-kilometer ribbon of coastline. This is where your luxury beachfronts, your international airport, and your primary cultural institutions are anchored. It basically acts as your logistical staging ground.
Okay, and the second zone?
The second zone is the interior, and this is where the historical and natural soul of the country really resides. This zone contains Nizwa, the ancient capital, the Wahiba Sands, which is this massive expanse of rolling desert dunes, Jebel Akhdar, sitting 2,000 meters above sea level, and the major wadis like Wadi Bani Khalid.
And this is where people mess up, right?
Big time. Most travelers fundamentally misunderstand this zone. They book 5 nights in a Muscat beach resort and just assume they can, like, pop over to the desert for a quick afternoon.
Right, because when you look at a map, it just doesn't look that far. But driving deep into the interior means you're navigating serious mountain passes, descending into valleys, dealing with remote roads. It's a real journey. And then there's the third zone, which honestly feels like it belongs on a different continent entirely, and that's the Deep South, specifically Salalah and the Dhofar region.
Yes, Salalah is climatically severed from the rest of the Arabian Peninsula. To understand how to time your trip, you really have to understand the meteorological logic of the region.
Let's break that down.
So the absolute peak time to visit Muscat and the interior is what we call the golden window, and that runs from October through March.
Okay.
During these months, that intense Gulf heat breaks, and Muscat settles into this perfectly comfortable sweet spot of about 22 to 28 degrees Celsius. The humidity drops.
Which is basically perfect weather.
It is. And if you want to comfortably hike the wadis without risking actual heat stroke, November through February is basically mandatory. Also, if you specifically want to see the famous damask roses blooming on the terraces of Jebel Akhdar, you absolutely must time your arrival for March.
Good to know.
But because the weather is flawless, you will pay a peak season premium. Hotel rates are generally 15 to 25% higher than the rest of the year.
Right, but let's contextualize that premium for a second. A 25% price hike on an already deeply undervalued room rate still leaves you paying significantly less than the baseline rate in neighboring countries.
That's a great point.
It's definitely a premium worth paying. But what if our listener is willing to trade just a little bit of comfort for a much sharper financial edge? That brings us to the shoulder season, right? April and May.
Yeah, April and May represent the smart value window. The temperatures are undeniably climbing. You will definitely start seeing days push past 32, maybe 35 degrees Celsius. But it's still manageable if you restrict your heavy outdoor activities to the early mornings.
So hike early, pool in the afternoon.
Exactly. And because you are slipping past the peak demand, hotel rates drop by 10 to 15%. But the real savings in the shoulder season are found in the flight logistics.
Oh, this is huge.
It is. If you're flying out of the U.S., historical data shows April offers incredibly favorable routing. You can secure round-trip flights via Etihad for around $662.
That is remarkably cheap.
I know. And for UK travelers, Oman Air runs direct 7-hour and 40-minute flights out of London Heathrow that drop to between £380 and £520 return during this window.
Okay, but then we crash into the do-not season, June through September.
Yes.
And I am not going to sugarcoat this for you. You do not want to be in Muscat in July. We were talking about sustained, punishing temperatures of 42 to 46 degrees Celsius, combined with just suffocating coastal humidity.
It's unbearable.
And if you push into the interior desert, the Wahiba Sands routinely hit 50 degrees Celsius. That is 122 degrees Fahrenheit. We're not telling you to avoid this season because it's just slightly uncomfortable. We're telling you to avoid it because it is a genuine medical hazard. Attempting a 2-hour hike through a canyon at 48 degrees will put you in the hospital.
Absolutely.
However, this is where Salah, that deep south zone we mentioned, breaks literally all the rules.
The Salah exception is honestly one of the most fascinating climate anomalies in the world. While Muscat and Dubai are basically baking in 45-degree heat, the Dhofar mountain range down in the south catches the edge of the Indian Ocean monsoon.
Wow.
Yeah, and this creates the Kharif season from June to September. So this normally arid brown landscape just explodes into this lush, misty, tropical green. The temperatures actually plummet to a beautiful 25 degrees.
That sounds incredible.
It's stunning, but it creates a massive economic ripple effect. Because it's the only naturally cool environment on the entire Arabian Peninsula, it triggers an absolute domestic tourism boom. Omanis, Saudis, Emiratis, they all flock to Salalah to escape the summer heat.
Oh, so prices must skyrocket.
Exactly. Hotels sell out completely, and you will pay a massive 30 to 40% price premium just to secure a basic room.
Wow. So the ironclad rule for timing is basically Muscat and the interior in the winter, and Salalah only in the summer if you are willing to pay the premium.
That's the rule.
And regardless of when you go, you also have to navigate the 2026 crowd flashpoints. Because even in a country with zero overtourism, bottlenecks still exist.
Oh, definitely.
If you go to Wadi Khalid on a weekend, you will feel squeezed simply because it's incredibly photogenic for Instagram and there's still no capacity limit. If you try to visit the Mutra Souk in Muscat on a Friday afternoon, It's just a mistake.
Yeah, don't do that.
Right, because Friday is the primary day of prayer and family gathering, so the souk only really operates efficiently at 9:00 a.m. or after 8:00 p.m. Up in the mountain, the Jebel Akhdar rose season in late February into March draws the country's only genuinely concentrated camera-wielding crowd.
Yep.
And finally, November 18th is Oman's National Day. Nizwa Fort hosts incredible celebrations, but it is the one single day of the calendar year where you will actually find yourself in the dense crowd at a heritage site.
Good to know. So, assuming you have threaded the needle on the dates and you've locked in your calendar, the next phase is the physical reality of actually arriving. The 24-hour arrival arc is so crucial because it essentially sets the entire psychological tone for your trip.
I always say that the scent of an airport tells you everything you need to know about a country's priorities.
Oh, totally.
Like if you fly into a massive Western hub, it usually smells like sterile floor cleaner and exhausted coffee. If you fly into Dubai, it smells like high-end retail perfume and extreme air conditioning. But Muscat International Airport, which opened its new terminal back in 2018, completely subverts that expectation.
It really does. It's a remarkable piece of civic architecture. You step off the plane into the arrivals hall, and you are immediately struck by these vaulted geometric Islamic ceilings. The space is vast, but it feels surprisingly calm.
Yeah.
And then the signature element hits you. The Omani government literally pipes the scent of pure frankincense directly through the airport's air conditioning diffusers.
That is just such a flex.
It is. That warm, slightly sweet, earthy resin smell is the very first signal to your nervous system that you have arrived in a place that deeply values its heritage. It physically grounds you.
And when you clear customs and you walk out those automatic doors, the visual profile completely reinforces that feeling. There are strict height regulations across Muscat. You aren't looking up at a claustrophobic canyon of glass and steel skyscrapers.
No, not at all.
You're looking at a low-rise, stark white skyline, perfectly offset by the jagged limestone ridgeline of the Hajar Mountains looming right behind the city. But the moment you step onto that pavement, you have to make your first major financial decision. How are you actually getting to your hotel? Let's unpack the exact transport costs right now.
Okay, so the first option you will see is the Mwasalat public bus, specifically Route 1, which runs right from the airport. The cost is negligible. It's just zero 0.3 Omani Rials, which is $0.78.
Which sounds great, right?
Sounds great, but do not take it. It's a commuter route built for residents, not tourists. Unless your hotel is directly on that specific highway corridor, you're just going to end up stranded with your luggage.
Right.
The second option is the metered white and orange taxis. They are reliable, and a run to major districts like Mutra or Rui will cost between 6 and 9 Rials, which is roughly $15 to $23.
But the much smarter play for point-to-point transit is just downloading the Careem app before you land.
Yes, definitely.
It's the dominant ride-hailing infrastructure in the region. An airport transfer to Central Muscat using Careem locks your price in at between $10 and $16, which completely removes any stress about meters.
Yep.
However, the absolute most critical transport decision you will make, and we're going to dive deeply into the consequences of this a bit later, happens right at the terminal rental desks.
Yeah.
You need to hire a car. You can walk up to Budget, Europcar, or Thrifty and secure a vehicle for an incredibly reasonable 12 to 18 Rials a day, which is just $31 to $47.
And to understand why a rental car is non-negotiable, you really have to visualize the geography of Muscat. As we mentioned, it isn't a traditional city. It is a 60-kilometer stretch of interconnected districts.
It's massive.
It is. You have Mutra, which holds the old port, the traditional souk, and the historic Corniche. Then a few kilometers inland is Rui, which is the bustling commercial and transit hub where you find your budget logistics.
Okay.
Further down the coast is Quorum, known for its sprawling public beaches and retail. Then you hit Chedi Al Quorum, which is the diplomatic enclave housing the high-end luxury resorts. And finally, areas like Madinat Sultan Qaboos, which are largely affluent residential zones.
Right.
Because these districts are strung out along the coastline like that, relying on taxis to bounce between them multiple times a day will completely obliterate your budget. A car grants you total autonomy over that 60-kilometer stretch. And more importantly, it unlocks the mountains sitting just 2 hours inland.
It's so true. Once you have the keys to your car and you've successfully navigated to your district, I highly recommend spending your very first dusk at the Mutra waterfront.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It perfectly crystallizes what makes Oman different. The water in the harbor turns this deep, bruised jade color. You have traditional wooden dhows, these beautiful sweeping merchant boats anchored right offshore. The limestone cliffs behind the city glow orange in the fading light.
It sounds like a painting.
It really is. But what is most striking is the absolute absence of friction. There are no hawkers aggressively pushing menus in your face. There are no neon party boats blasting music. You might just see a fisherman quietly repairing a net while the call to prayer echoes naturally across the harbor. It is a total, complete contrast to the manufactured energy of something like the Dubai Marina.
It's a profound introduction to the country, but, after you watch that sunset, you need a place to sleep.
You do?
And this brings us to the accommodation breakdown. And we really need to confront a persistent myth about the Gulf. The idea that budget travel here simply doesn't exist, and that you are essentially forced into paying luxury rates simply by crossing the border. Oman shatters that myth, but you have to know exactly which infrastructure tier you belong in.
Right. So let's start at the absolute bottom line, the backpacker tier. Now, I have to challenge this slightly. If I am a backpacker used to traveling through, say, Vietnam or Colombia, where hostel networks are deeply entrenched and cost like $8 a night, how does Oman actually function for me? Can I realistically backpack here?
You can, but you have to accept that the infrastructure is still very much in its infancy. Historically, Oman simply did not cater to the backpacker demographic. The government focus was heavily on low-volume, high-yield tourism, so the traditional hostel network is very thin.
Makes sense.
However, in the Rui district, you can find spots like Muscat Backpackers, which offers dorm beds for $15 to $21 a night.
That's not bad.
No, and if you want a private room on a strict budget, the City Way Hotel, also in Rui, delivers clean, highly basic private rooms for $31 to $39 a night. But the greatest backpacker value in the entire country isn't actually in the city, it's out in the desert.
Oh, right.
Yeah, in the Wahiba Sands, you can book a spot in a traditional desert camp for between $39 and $65 a night. And the crucial detail here is that this price is almost always full board.
Wait, really?
Yes, you are getting your bed, an expansive traditional dinner under the stars, and breakfast the next morning, all included for under $65. It is an astonishing return on investment.
That desert camp value is incredible. Okay, let's move to the mid-range tier. For the traveler who wants comfort, air conditioning, and a pool, but absolutely refuses to pay luxury resort premiums.
Right.
In Muscat, you have institutions like the Al Falaj Hotel, sitting right at $143 to $143 a night. Or you can head toward the beach in Quorum and grab a room at the Radisson Blu for $143 to $182. But I know you have a very specific property that you believe truly defines mid-range value in Oman.
I do. Yes, Miss Old House. If a traveler ever asks me where they absolutely must stay to understand Oman, I send them here.
Okay, tell us about it.
It's located in the interior, in the village of Misfat al-Abriyin, precariously built right into the side of a mountain. The property itself is a beautifully restored 300-year-old mud brick dwelling.
300 years old?
Yes,
Wow.
and it's run entirely by a local Omani family. A room here runs between $78 and $117 a night.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. I am looking at photos of Misfa Old House right now.
Yeah.
You are basically sleeping on a traditional floor mattress. The walls are literally made of mud and straw. Why is a listener paying $117 to sleep on the floor when they could have a plush mattress at the Radisson for slightly more? Sell me on the value of a 300-year-old mud house.
Because you are paying for an entirely unreplicable cultural immersion. You're not buying thread count. You are buying access.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
Right. When you wake up at Misfa Old House, the family prepares traditional Omani coffee infused with cardaran and rosewater and serves it to you with fresh dates grown on the terraces right below your window, right as the sun crests the Hajar Mountains.
Wow.
You're walking through ancient Falaj irrigation channels right outside your door. You are experiencing the exact rhythm of Omani mountain life that has existed for centuries. The Radisson gives you a comfortable sleep. Misfa Old House gives you a memory that anchors your entire trip.
Fair enough. You are definitely buying the context, not just the bed. Let's look at the family tier next. Oman's resort infrastructure is heavily calibrated for families.
It really is.
You have massive footprint properties like the JW Marriott Muscat sitting right near the Al Mouj Marina. It offers extensive tools, highly manicured grounds, and it runs $234 to $364 a night. The Grand Hyatt Muscat over in Chedi Al Khorm offers exceptional beach access and family suites for $208 to $312.
Both great options.
And if a family needs the logistical flexibility of a kitchen and, like, washing machines, the wave-serviced apartments provide fantastic, highly modern self-catering options.
Exactly. Finally, the luxury tier. This is where Oman competes with the heaviest hitters in global hospitality. We really have to look at the two titans here, the Chedi Muscat and Alila Jebel Akhdar.
The heavyweights.
Yep. The Chedi is basically an architectural triumph. It uses these stark white geometric lines, massive reflecting pools, and incredibly manicured palm gardens right on the beach. Rooms start at $390 and climb to $650. The service is basically telepathic. The food is world-class. It is the very definition of refined, understated opulence.
The Chedi is undeniably beautiful, but for me, Alila Jabal Akhdar is the absolute trump card. It fundamentally redefines what a Gulf luxury resort can be.
It's pretty spectacular.
To understand Alila, you have to understand the engineering behind it. They built this property directly onto the lip of a jagged limestone cliff, literally 2,000 meters above sea level.
It's a crazy.
The architecture relies entirely on locally sourced stone and wood, meaning the resort almost camouflages right into the mountain. You swim in an infinity pool that genuinely feels like it drops off straight into the canyon gorge.
It's breathtaking.
And a room here will cost you $468 to $832 a night. When you compare that to a $1,000 a night property in Dubai, where your view is just, other glass skyscrapers and traffic, the Alila offers something money rarely buys in this region anymore. Absolute, profound, majestic silence.
It is a stunning property. But, whether you are spending $15 on a dorm bed or $800 on a cliff edge suite, every single traveler eventually has to walk out the door and find something to eat.
Very true.
And this brings us to Module 5, the food systems. The way food is priced in Oman is incredibly unique, and if you do not understand the underlying mechanics of it, it honestly becomes the most exploitable cost lever in the entire country.
I always try to explain this using a geographical tax bracket analogy.
Yeah.
In a lot of cities, food prices basically exist on a smooth spectrum.
Right.
But in Oman, it is binary.
Very binary.
You can cross a single street moving from the marina tourist strip into the residential block. And the economic fundamentals of the country seem to change entirely. You step out of the tourist zone and into the local zone, and suddenly your purchasing power just quintuples.
That is an excellent way to frame it. You basically have two parallel food systems operating simultaneously. First, you have the authentic Omani food system. This revolves around local restaurants called mutbaks, as well as neighborhood shawarma counters.
And who is this system for?
This system is designed for local workers and Omani families. The food is heavily spiced, slow-cooked, and just incredible. You will eat shua, which is lamb marinated in spices, wrapped in banana leaves, and literally slow-roasted in an underground sand oven for 24 hours.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It is. You will eat makbuz, which is this fragrant rice and meat dish. You'll eat hariz, a savory wheat porridge. Because the system operates on local supply chains with low real estate overhead, a massive, incredibly satisfying meal will cost you between 1 and 3 Omani rials. That is exactly $2.60 to $7.80.
That's practically nothing. But then you cross the street into the tourist food system.
Right.
This encompasses the marina front cafes, the hotel dining rooms, and the internationally branded restaurants. The incredible irony is that many of these places are serving the exact same traditional dishes. They are serving shua, they are serving makbuz.
Yep.
But because they're paying premium oceanfront real estate costs, because they have to maintain extensive English-speaking staff, and because they are explicitly targeting foreign wallets, the price for that exact same plate of food skyrockets to between 8 and 18 reals. You are suddenly paying $21 to $47. Let that math process in your head for a second. An authentic hearty dinner in the local mutbak costs the exact same amount as a single mediocre cappuccino in a Muscat hotel lobby.
It's nuts. And if you're traveling as a family or maybe a digital nomad and you want to opt out of restaurants entirely, you must understand the grocery economics.
Oh, definitely.
There are 3 main supermarket tiers. The undisputed king of value is Lulu Hypermarket. They have these massive warehouse-style locations in Quorum, Sib, and Gubra.
And the prices are wild, right?
Staggering. The supply chain logistics they utilize across the Gulf allow for staggering prices. A 1.5-liter bottle of drinking water is $2.26. Freshly baked Cubs flatbread is $0.26. A dozen local eggs cost $1.56, and a full kilogram of fresh chicken is only $3.90. If you want to take home the best souvenir in the country, pure Omani rosewater honey Lulu sells it for between $5.20 and $13 a jar.
Wait, I have to stop you there. Those prices sound artificially suppressed. I mean, Oman is a hyper-arid desert nation. They do not have sprawling green agricultural heartlands to support massive poultry or wheat industries. They import a massive percentage of their food. How on earth is a kilogram of chicken sitting at under $4? Are these government-subsidized prices?
It's actually a mix of highly aggressive aggressive regional trade agreements and massive, efficient supply chains coming across the Indian Ocean from India and Pakistan. But it's also coupled with very specific government price caps on essential staple goods to protect the local population from inflation.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, and as a traveler, you directly benefit from those local price protections when you shop at Lulu. If you step up to Almira, the mid-range supermarket, you will pay a slight premium for a slightly cleaner, quieter shopping experience.
Got it.
And if you go to Carrefour Oman in city center Muscat, you will find a massive array of Western imported brands like French cheeses, American cereals, but you will absolutely pay a heavy import premium for the privilege of eating exactly what you eat at home.
Let's address the elephant in the room regarding Gulf travel. Alcohol logistics. Oman is an Islamic nation. You cannot buy a six-pack of beer at Lulu hypermarket.
No, you can't.
Alcohol is strictly controlled and only served in licensed hotel bars, high-end tourist restaurants, and the airport duty-free. Because the licensing is so restrictive and heavily taxed, a standard pint of beer will run you $7.80 to $10.40. If you are a traveler who naturally enjoys a few cocktails with dinner, your food budget will double instantly. But if you are comfortable having a dry week, the compound savings across a 7-day trip are massive.
Beyond the economics of eating and drinking, there are rigid cultural etiquettes you absolutely must observe. The dress code is not a suggestion. It is a hard social requirement.
This is super important.
When you are outside of a private resort or a designated tourist beach, both men and women must cover their shoulders and knees. You cannot walk through the Mutra Souk in a tank top, and you absolutely cannot hike through a rural Wadi village in a bikini top and short shorts. Public displays of affection beyond holding hands are inappropriate.
And we must urgently highlight the 2026 Ramadan calendar.
Yeah.
In 2026, Ramadan will run from late February to late March. This is a period of strict daytime fasting for the entire country.
The logistical impact on your trip is total.
Yes, eating, drinking a bottle of water, or smoking in public during daylight hours is not just culturally offensive, it is illegal. Many restaurants close completely until sunset. If you travel during this window, you must plan your days meticulously, carrying hidden water and understanding that the entire rhythm of the country shifts entirely to the night.
Yep.
Finally, on the topic of dining etiquette, tipping is not a rigid cultural mandate, but a 10% tip in a sit-down restaurant is the standard operating norm.
Okay, let's synthesize all of these variables, the transport, the accommodation tiers, the food systems, into the daily financial matrix. We need to calculate the actual out-of-pocket bottom lines you need to anticipate.
I love doing this because this is where the theoretical planning actually meets the spreadsheet. Let's run the exact numbers.
Yeah.
At the low tier, the backpacker level, you need to budget $44 to $55 a day if you stay entirely within the Muscat city limits.
Right.
If you split a car rental with another traveler to reach the Wadis, your daily burn rate bumps slightly to $50 to $65. Let's break down a hypothetical Tuesday on this budget. You wake up in your $18 dorm bed in Rui. You eat 3 meals exclusively within the local Mudbox system, spending a total of $7.
Wow.
You use Careem for city transit and split the car cost, running about $15. Your activities hiking Wadi Shab, swimming at the public beach, wandering the souk cost absolutely nothing. Add $5 for miscellaneous water and snacks, and you hit $45. It is incredibly lean, but you are not sacrificing the core experience of the country at all.
That's amazing. Now moving to the mid-tier, designed for a couple sharing costs. You must budget $120 to $160 per person per day. Let's look at the math here. You split a fantastic room at the Al Falaj or Miswa Old House, costing you $60 per person.
Okay.
You mix your food systems of $5 mutbak lunch, followed by a $25 mid-range tourist dinner. You have your own dedicated rental car costing $20 per person, and you allocate $20 for one paid activity, like a guided fort tour or a small boat trip. Add $10 for incidentals. You are spending around $140 a day for absolute comfort, autonomy, and cultural immersion. The value proposition here is simply bulletproof.
Then we hit the high tier, the luxury traveler. This budget runs $305 to $460 per person per day. You are sleeping at the Chedi or Alila, which costs roughly $250 per person when split. You are eating world-class hotel dinners, spending $60 a day on food.
Sounds lovely.
You're utilizing private drivers or concierge transfers instead of driving yourself, which runs $40 a day. And you are booking premium activities like a private coastal boat charter for $60. Your daily total sits around $410 per person. And I cannot stress this enough. Achieving this exact same level of curated private luxury in Dubai or Abu Dhabi will cost you upwards of $800 to $900 a day. You are getting top-tier opulence at a 40 to 50% regional discount.
That's a massive difference. We also need to factor in the rising demographic of digital nomads. Muscat's infrastructure is incredibly well suited for long-term remote work.
Absolutely.
The monthly matrix is compelling. A nomad can live exceptionally well here for between $5,508 and $2,340 a month. You can secure a one-bedroom apartment lease in a desirable district like Quorum or Alcahuere for $910 to $1,300 a month.
That's really solid.
A dedicated desk at a co-working space like the Make Business Hub will cost $78 to $130 a month. Add $700 for groceries, mutt-book dining, and a car rental. That monthly burn rate is a massive 50% cheaper than the $4,000 baseline required to maintain a similar lifestyle in Dubai.
Okay, so your budget is locked, your dates are set, your flights are booked. But this brings us to Module 7. Because even with a flawless spreadsheet, the physical execution of a trip can spectacularly derail.
Oh, yes, it can.
We have identified the 3 specific logistical traps that catch travelers out every single day in Oman.
Yeah.
Trap number 1, the car dependency trap. I think of this like buying a state-of-the-art smartphone, taking it out of the box and realizing it doesn't have an operating system installed.
Right.
The hardware is beautiful, you can hold it, you can look at the shiny glass, but you cannot actually unlock any of the features that make it valuable. That is exactly what Oman is like if you refuse to hire a car.
The mechanism of this trap is entirely structural. Oman's public transport network is a strictly utilitarian commuter system. It was engineered to move local residents between residential blocks and commercial centers. It was never designed to connect tourists to natural wonders.
That's the key right there.
Right. The Mawassalat buses do not run out to the remote trailhead of Wadi Shab. There is no bus stop at the 2,000-meter summit of Jebel Akhdar. Careem and the local Otaxi apps are geofenced. They only operate within the city limits. And unlike Europe, there is no passenger rail network in Oman. None. The geography of the Hajjah Mountains makes building a train line economically and physically prohibitive.
Let me walk you through the lived reality of falling into this trap. Traveler A decides they are terrified of driving in the Middle East. They don't rent a car. They take a taxi from the airport to their resort in Shadi al-Quorum. They spend 5 days taking expensive short taxi rides to the Mutrasuk and the Grand Mosque. They spend the rest of the time sitting by the pool. Right. They fly home and tell their friends, Oman was nice, a bit quiet, just another beach. Now look at Traveler B. They rent a car at the airport. On Tuesday, they wake up at 5 a.m., drive the coastal highway as the sun rises, and park at Wadi Shab. They pay a local boatman $2.60 to cross the river, hike deep into a limestone canyon completely alone, and swim through a submerged cave into a hidden waterfall.
Incredible.
Traveler B just had a life-altering, visceral adventure. Traveler A had a mild sunburn. The car is the operating system that unlocks the country.
The fix is non-negotiable. You just book the car from Budget, Europcar, or Thrifty for the entire duration of your stay. But there's a massive sub-trap hidden within this rule, specifically regarding Jebel Akhdar.
Oh, the checkpoint.
Yes. If you are driving up the Green Mountain, Omani law strictly mandates the use of a 4x4 vehicle. The ascent is incredibly steep, with aggressive hairpin turns and severe gradients. There is a Royal Oman police checkpoint permanently stationed at the base of the mountain in Alakor.
And they don't mess around.
No, they don't. If you attempt to drive past them in a standard two-wheel drive sedan, they will order you to turn around. You cannot bribe them, you cannot charm them, and you cannot promise to drive slowly. You will be denied entry. You must book that 4x4 months in advance because they routinely sell out at the airport desks during peak season.
Trap number 2, the Wadi day trip scam belt. This trap is particularly insidious because it actively weaponizes the very thing Oman is famous for. It's incredible hospitality.
It is so unfortunate.
It is. The mechanism works like this. If you drive south from Muscat along the coastal highway towards Sur, you will pass the Bima sinkhole and the Wadi Shab trailhead. When you pull your car into the dirt parking lots at either of these locations, a group of men will immediately approach your vehicle. They are smiling, they are dressed impeccably, and they are overwhelmingly polite. They welcome you to Oman. They offer to guide you down the trail, pointing out where to step and where to swim. You assume this is just that famous Omani friendliness. But when you finish the hike, their demeanor shifts, and they present you with a demand for 25 to 40 reals, $65 to $104 per person, for a service you never actually requested.
The psychological exploit here is fascinating. The scammers know that Western tourists arrive with their guard completely lowered because they have read 100 blogs about how safe and honest Oman is. We see the fallout from this constantly.
It's a huge bummer.
If you scour the 2025 and 2026 TripAdvisor reviews for Wadi Shab, this specific scam is flagged repeatedly. One reviewer recently wrote, "Don't fall for the scam. Gives such a bad taste in your mouth in an otherwise lovely country with kind people." And that is the true cost of the trap. The financial loss of $100 won't bankrupt you, but the emotional damage is severe. You spend the drive back to Muscat feeling gullible, violated, and resentful. It shatters the illusion of the destination.
And the most frustrating part is that the actual official cost to access Wadi Shab is exactly 1 rial, or $2.60. That money goes directly to the official boatmen who ferry you across the deep water inlet at the very start of the trail. The men loitering in the parking lot have absolutely no affiliation with those boats.
None at all.
So here's the exact step-by-step fix to neutralize this trap. When you park your car, do not engage in conversation with anyone approaching your window. Give a polite, firm no thank you and keep walking. Do not accept an offer to be shown the way.
Just keep walking.
The trail through Wadi Shab is essentially a massive canyon funnel. It is physically impossible to get lost. You walk to the water, you hand your $2.60 to the man sitting in the boat, you cross, and you hike. Also, crucially, do not attempt this hike with a tiny 500 milliliter plastic water bottle. You need a minimum of 2 liters of water per person.
Which leads directly into trap number 3, the altitude and cold trap. This catches an astonishing number of people completely off guard because of the extreme geographic contrast of the country.
It's hard to wrap your head around until you feel it.
Exactly. The mechanism here relies on basic meteorology. Imagine you are in Muscat in late November. The sun is shining, it's a glorious 28 degrees Celsius, and you are sweating comfortably in your shorts and t-shirt. You get into your 4x4 and drive 2 hours inland, ascending the winding roads up to the 2,000-meter summit plateau of Jebel Akhdar. As the sun drops below the horizon, the temperature on the mountain plummets to 8 or 10 degrees Celsius.
That is freezing.
It is. The temperature differential between the beach and the mountain peak on the exact same afternoon can easily exceed 20 degrees Celsius.
The lived reality of falling into this trap is just sheer misery. You see it all the time at the luxury resorts. A couple arrives at the stunning Alila Jebel Akhdar. They have packed exclusively for a tropical Gulf beach, holiday linen shirts, sundresses, sandals. They walk out onto the cliff edge viewing terrace at 6:00 p.m. to watch the sunset, and a biting, freezing mountain wind hits them.
I've seen it happen.
The defining experience of that mountain is sitting on that terrace, watching the jagged limestone turn gold as the sun sets. It is a profound hour. But if you are shivering so violently that your teeth are chattering, it stops being a profound experience and becomes a miserable 5-minute photo opportunity before you sprint back inside to the heated lobby.
The fix requires almost zero effort. Pack one warm, windproof layer for every single day you are in Oman, regardless of the month you travel. A quality fleece or a compressible down jacket takes up minimal space in your luggage. If your itinerary includes an overnight stay on Jebel Akhdar between October and February, pack a second heavy layer and warm socks. You will thank yourself when you are sitting comfortably on that terrace at dusk.
So we have mapped out the logistical traps and given you the tools to neutralize them. Now we need to shift the conversation to Module 8, the baseline anxiety level for a traveler. We need to talk about safety.
Let's do it.
And I want to frame peace of mind not just as a statistical reality, but as an invisible premium luxury amenity that Oman provides to every single traveler entirely for free. When you travel to many globally famous destinations, Paris, Rio, even parts of New York, a background processor in your brain is constantly running threat assessments. Is my phone safe in this pocket? Should I walk down this alley? Is that taxi driver running a rigged meter? Oman unplugs that processor completely.
It really does. Let's look at the hard data, completely divorced from any regional stereotypes. Oman consistently ranks as one of the safest sovereign states on the planet. The Global Peace Index for 2025 places Oman firmly in the top 20 safest countries globally.
Top 20 is huge.
That statistical placement ranks it as tangibly safer than the United Kingdom, safer than France, and vastly safer than the United States. Violent crime targeting international tourists is statistically negligible. The UK Foreign Office Travel Advisory currently holds Oman at level 1, take normal precautions. That is the lowest, most benign threat level they issue.
Wait, I have to push back on the idea of total safety, because while I believe the crime statistics, there are different types of danger. If I am driving a rental car through a canyon, my threat vector isn't a pickpocket, it's the environment.
That is an incredibly important distinction. The primary genuine risks you face in Oman are entirely environmental and physical, not criminal. The number one threat to a tourist is dehydration and heat exhaustion during the summer months.
Absolutely.
The second is the risk of flash flooding. If heavy rain hits the Hajar Mountains miles away, a bone-dry wadi can transform into a raging, lethal torrent of water within minutes. You must never camp directly in a wadi riverbed. And the third genuine risk is vehicular accidents on the mountain passes. While the highways are immaculate, Omani driving etiquette can be aggressive, and navigating hairpin descents requires intense focus.
And what about the demographic that faces the most friction globally? Solo female travelers. This is always a massive question. If a woman is listening to this right now and considering navigating this 60-kilometer city and these remote mountain villages entirely alone, what is the honest, unvarnished reality she will face?
The honest reality is highly nuanced, but overwhelmingly positive. Oman is widely considered one of the most accessible and consistently safe destinations for solo female travelers in the Muslim world. Documented reports from solo female overlanders and travel bloggers consistently highlight a profound lack of physical threat.
That's great to hear.
They report zero aggressive street harassment. They report no pressure to adopt a hijab or cover their hair beyond the required modesty at specific religious sites like the Grand Mosque. What they do report is a staggering level of proactive, protective hospitality from local men, unprompted offers to help change a flat tire, or invitations to share dates and coffee, offered with absolutely zero hidden predatory agenda.
But I know you well enough to know there is a but coming. What is the friction point? Because if we tell a listener it is 100% flawless and she encounters discomfort, we have failed her.
The friction point occurs in highly traditional rural contexts. While the country is physically safe, if a solo Western woman walks into a very conservative, male-dominated mutbach in a deep interior village to order lunch, she will almost certainly be stared at.
Right.
It is not a stare of predatory danger. It is a stare of intense cultural curiosity, because a solo foreign woman in that specific room is an anomaly. But to the traveler, being stared at relentlessly by a room full of men feels uncomfortable. It triggers alarms. It is crucial to understand that this is cultural friction, not physical danger.
Okay, so what's the move there?
The tactical advice for navigating this is straightforward. Dress conservatively loose clothing, covering the shoulders and knees, walk with visible confidence, and ignore the mild stares. If you are in the mutrasuk and an incense vendor is aggressively trying to upsell you, look him in the eye and say, La shukran, which is Arabic for no thank you. It establishes a firm boundary, and they will immediately respect it and back off.
Let's talk about families, because bringing children introduces a whole new matrix of anxiety. From a safety and logistics standpoint, how does Oman hold up for a family of 4?
Oman is a spectacular family destination. The Islamic culture holds family units, and particularly young children, in massive, visible reverence. If your toddler has a meltdown in a restaurant in London or New York, you get glares of irritation. If your toddler has a meltdown in Muscat, local Omanis will offer sympathetic smiles or even try to help distract the child.
That's so refreshing.
Beyond the cultural warmth, the activities are brilliant. Taking a family out on a boat to the Dimaniyat Islands Marine Reserve for a day of snorkeling above sea turtles is unforgettable. However, the medical logistics require planning. Central Muscat possesses excellent, international standard private healthcare facilities. Hospitals like Astor and the Royal Hospital are world-class.
Good to know.
But if you take your family deep into the Wahiba Sands or up Jebel Akhdar, you are physically removing yourself from that safety net. A severe medical emergency in the interior might require a grueling 90-minute drive back to the capital, or even helicopter evacuation. Families must carry comprehensive first aid kits in their rental cars.
So, we have secured the perimeter. You are safe, your budget is intact, you haven't been scammed. Now we get to the fun part, Module 9, the highlights and the honest disappointments. Because Instagram has severely distorted what Gulf travel actually looks like, we need to separate the manufactured hype from the actual visceral experiences that will define your trip. Let's start with the absolute peak experience.
For me, and for almost every data point we have, the peak experience is Wadi Shab, but specifically at 7 a.m.
Yes. I want to describe this in extreme sensory detail so you understand why it matters. If you execute our advice, you have your rental car, and you arrive at the trailhead as the sun is coming up, before the tour buses from Muscat arrive. You step off the small wooden ferry boat. The canyon starts out incredibly wide, blasted by the sun. But as you hike over the polished boulders for 40 minutes, the limestone walls begin to close in on you.
It's like entering another world.
They rise hundreds of feet straight up, streaked with these vibrant green and deep orange mineral deposits. The water flowing beside the trail is an impossible luminous turquoise. Because you are the only human being in the gorge, the acoustic profile is incredible. You only hear the echo of your own footsteps, the trickle of the water, and the calls of the birds high up on the cliffs.
And then you reach the end of the dry trail and the physical adventure begins. You strip down to your swimwear, slide into the cool water, and you swim deeper up the canyon channel. The walls narrow until they are only a few meters apart. It's almost claustrophobic.
You reach a rock wall that looks like a dead end, but there's a narrow, slightly claustrophobic slit in the rock just above the waterline. You take a breath, you swim through that dark passage, and you surface inside a completely enclosed cavern. A powerful waterfall is pouring into the deep pool from a ledge inside the cave, and a single dramatic shaft of sunlight pierces through a hole in the cavern roof.
It's magic.
It is a transcendent, intensely physical moment of discovery. Nothing in the hyper-developed UAE can replicate the raw thrill of swimming into that cave.
Let's run through the other named highlights that absolutely justify the trip. The sunrise at Alila Jebel Akhdar. You are leaning on the stone edge of the infinity pool, looking down into the massive gorge. You watch the thick morning mist slowly burn off the green rose terraces below as the first sharp light hits the jagged summits of the Hajar Mountains. It feels like you are sitting on the roof of the Arabian Peninsula.
It really does. Another highlight, the Metro Souk, but it must be at 9:00 p.m. During the day, it feels like a standard tourist market selling pashminas. But at night, the atmosphere completely inverts. The gold and jewelry sections quiet down, and the winding back lanes fill with local Omanis buying raw frankincense and antique silver. The air is thick with smoke. It stops being a tourist attraction and becomes a living, breathing neighborhood.
I will absolutely add the Friday morning fish market at the Mooch Report to that list, but you must be there exactly at 7 a.m. You stand on the concrete docks and watch the fishermen unload massive, heavy catches of hammer and kingfish directly off the weathered wooden dhows.
The energy there is wild.
The bartering is loud, the energy is chaotic, the floor is slick with seawater. You can buy hot, fresh flatbread and spiced tea from vendors right on the edge of the chaos. It is a jolt of pure, unrefined commerce. And finally, Nizwa Fort at opening time, exactly at 8 a.m. You cross the moat, and the entire massive stone complex is completely empty. The morning sun casts these long, dramatic shadows across the defensive battlements. Without the crowds, you can actually feel the heavy militaristic history of the space.
But we promised you a brutally honest deep dive, which means we have to dismantle the overhyped experiences, the things that look incredible in promotional brochures but fall completely flat in person. Let's start with the Sultan Qaboos Grand Mosque.
The Grand Mosque is an architectural triumph. The sheer scale of the marble courtyards and the weight of the chandelier in the main hall are awe-inspiring, but the actual tourist experience is heavily, tightly restricted.
Extremely restricted.
If you are a non-Muslim visitor, your access is confined to very specific corridors, and the visiting hours are brutally short. You cannot wander freely. Furthermore, that incredible wide-angle, highly stylized photo of the main dome that you see on every travel influencer's feed. That perspective usually requires special, pre-arranged media permits that you, as a standard tourist, will not possess.
So manage your expectations.
Right. The reality is that most visitors spend 25 heavily shepherded minutes walking a permitted perimeter, and they leave feeling mildly underwhelmed simply because their expectations were miscalibrated by the internet.
The other major overhyped activity is Wahiba Sands dune driving. The marketing literature makes it look like you are going to be Lawrence of Arabia, conquering the vast, untamed wilderness in a roaring 4x4.
Which is not the case.
The reality is profoundly different. The commercial operators run dozens of identical quad bikes and dune buggies in continuous circles around a tightly contained, heavily rutted 2-kilometer loop just off the highway. You are paying $39 to $65 an hour to drive around a dusty track with 20 other vehicles kicking sand directly into your face. It is exhilarating for exactly 10 minutes, and then it feels exactly like what it is. A managed theme park ride.
If you want the authentic desert experience, you bypass the buggies and you wild camp. You drive to the remote eastern edge of the Wahiba Sands. You ask the concierge at your hotel for a safe set of GPS coordinates. You drive an hour off the tarmac, pitch a canvas tent, and sleep under a canopy of stars with absolutely zero other vehicles on the horizon. That is where you find the profound, ringing silence of the desert.
Now, I want to unpack my biggest personal disappointment with Oman, and it has to do with the food, specifically the Muscat seafood scene.
Oh, this is a good point.
For years, the mid-range dining scene in Muscat was aggressively hyped up by travel magazines as the next big culinary story in the Gulf. I am looking at it in 2026, and the reality is stark.
Yeah.
It still hasn't materialized. The local mutbak food is phenomenal, as we discussed, and the $100 hotel dinners are great. But if I want to spend $30 on an incredible, locally sourced, mid-tier seafood dinner in a cool neighborhood restaurant, my options are shockingly limited. Why does a country with 3,000 kilometers of coastline on the Indian Ocean and centuries of maritime spice trade history has such an underdeveloped mid-tier restaurant culture?
It is a genuine missed opportunity, and it stems from a mix of zoning laws, supply chain priorities, and historical dining culture. Historically, eating out wasn't a major pillar of Omani social life. Elaborate dining happened within the private home. The seafood caught off the coast of Muscat is incredible, but a massive percentage of the premium catch is immediately exported to wealthier, more established restaurant markets in Dubai or Riyadh, where the margins are higher. If you want a direct contrast to prove what Oman is capable of, look at Musandam.
Exactly. Musandam is the Omani exclave up north, physically separated by the UAE. Up there, the fishing culture dominates. You can pull a plastic chair up to a completely unpretentious local spot and eat a massive, freshly caught whole lobster grilled with garlic and spices for 8 reals, about $21.
That's amazing.
It is staggering value and incredible quality. The fact that this specific energy and accessibility hasn't translated down the coast to the capital city of Muscat is baffling.
So knowing all the highs, the lows, and the costs, we arrive at Module 10. Before we can deliver a final verdict, we have to put Oman in the ring against its two closest regional competitors. Because if you were spending $3,000 on a vacation, evaluating these destinations is exactly like evaluating competing job offers. One offer gives you immediate flash, convenience, and a massive signing bonus. The other offers deep substance, long-term reward, but requires more daily effort.
Let's look at alternative 1, Jordan. Specifically, the Petra and Wadi Rum circuit. For travelers drawn to the romance of vast deserts and ancient carved heritage, Jordan is the most direct conceptual comparison to Oman. It has the red sand, the Bedouin culture, the history, but the fundamental difference lies in the crowds and the sheer cost of access.
Right, the Jordan Pass.
Jordan utilizes the Jordan Pass, which bundles visa and entry fees and costs upwards of $70. When you compare that to Oman, where the combined entry fees for every major fort and museum in the country amount to less than $40, the economic friction is immediate.
And the crowd dynamic between the two is staggering. Petra is undeniably one of the greatest archaeological sites on Earth, but it is now processing a relentless volume of humanity. In peak season, you are sharing the narrow, sick canyon with 5,000 to 8,000 other visitors every single day.
That's a lot of people.
The walk toward the treasury feels heavily trafficked, commercialized, and relentlessly managed. You are constantly dodging horse carriages and souvenir vendors. Wadi Rum competes with the Wahiba Sands on sheer vertical beauty, but again, the jeep traffic is dense. The conclusion is simple. Jordan is for the traveler who absolutely must take a world-famous UNESCO wonder off their bucket list and is fully prepared to pay a heavy premium and fight through crowds to do it. Oman is for the traveler who wants that exact same level of profound, ancient atmosphere, but demands isolation while experiencing it.
Let's pivot to alternative 2, Ras Al Khaimah in the UAE. Al-Raik is the northernmost emirate, and in 2026, it is marketing itself aggressively as the crowd-free, value-driven alternative to Dubai. And on paper, the math works. You can book a luxury villa at the Ritz-Carlton Ras Al Khaimah for $300 to $400 a night, which is a massive discount compared to Dubai's Palm Jumeirah properties. They have built the region's longest zip line on Jebel Akhdar, the highest peak in the UAE. It looks like a direct competitor to Oman's mountain and resort offering.
It looks like a competitor, but the core product is entirely different. Ras Al Khaimah is still fundamentally the UAE model. It is a highly manufactured resort experience placed into a beautiful desert setting. The deep cultural depth, The ancient, lived-in historical texture and the raw, uncurated landscape variety that Oman provides simply do not exist in our AK.
Yeah, not at all.
If your singular goal is to fly direct into a massive airport, take a 45-minute taxi ride, and spend 5 uninterrupted days inside a luxury resort bubble with a nice spa and one dramatic zipline excursion, Ras Al Khaimah executes that perfectly. But if you want a country to explore, if you want to drive yourself through mountain passes, negotiate in a working silver souk, and swim through hidden caves, Oman defeats Ras Al Khaimah by a massive, insurmountable margin.
Which brings us to Module 11, the final verdict matrix. This is the ultimate synthesis. We're going to run the final diagnostic test for you, the listener, to determine exactly where your persona fits into this landscape and answer the core question: is Oman worth your money?
Let's execute the verdicts. Persona 1, the backpacker. The verdict is yes, with conditions. At $44 to $65 a day, Oman is highly affordable by Middle Eastern standards, though it will never compete with the $20 a day reality of Southeast Asia. You will sleep in basic dorms in Rui and rely on the incredible mutbak food system. But the absolute condition is the car.
I have to interject here. If the condition for a backpacker is that they must rent a car, is it really a backpacker destination? Backpacking implies relying on public transit and cheap buses. If I'm forced to sign a lease on a vehicle, the entire ethos changes.
It changes the ethos, but it doesn't break the budget if executed correctly. If a solo backpacker arrives, connects with one other traveler at the Muscat Backpackers Hostel, and splits the $30 daily rental fee of a basic Yaris, the cost is just $15 a day per person. That $15 is the key to unlocking the entire country. Without it, you are stranded in the city, and the value case collapses completely. With the shared car, you can execute a 7-day adventure hiking free wadis, exploring Nizwa, sleeping in the desert for under $600 total. It requires logistical effort, but the reward is immense.
Persona 2, the Midrange Couple. The verdict here is a resounding, unambiguous yes. This is Oman's absolute strongest demographic category. At $115 to $168 per person per day, the value you extract is unbeatable. You secure a comfortable room at the Radisson or an unforgettable night at Misfa Old House. You have your own rental car, giving you total freedom. You mix cheap local lunches with excellent tourist dinners. The quality of the experience, the autonomy, and the access to raw nature simply cannot be replicated at this price point in Europe, and certainly not in the UAE. Oman is, without question, the best value mid-range destination operating in the Gulf right now. Book the flight.
Persona 3, the family. The verdict is yes, with conditions. The resort infrastructure is flawless. Properties like the JW Marriott give you a massive, safe, highly serviced base camp for $200 to $280 per day for a family of 4. The culture is incredibly welcoming to children. The strict condition lies in the physical reality of the Omani terrain.
It's rugged.
Very rugged. If you have children under 5 years old, the marquee natural attractions are going to present severe logistical challenges. The 45-minute hike over uneven boulders into Wadi Shab is not suitable for toddlers, and you cannot take a pram. The sheer drops at the viewpoints on Jebel Akhdar require constant vigilance. The honest itinerary for a family with toddlers is 3 nights at a Muscat beach resort, 2 nights exploring the flat, accessible courtyards of Nizwa Fort, and substituting the rugged Wadi Shab for the Bima sinkhole, which features a paved, flat walkway and stairs down to the water.
Persona 4, the luxury traveler. The verdict is yes. We have debated the properties. You heavily favor the flawless consistency and beachfront access to the Chedi, while I firmly believe the 2,000-meter, drone-free, cliff-edge architecture of the Alila Jebel Akhdar is the superior choice. But despite our preference, we are totally aligned on the fundamental truth. Both of these properties are world-class. Not just good for the Middle East, they compete on a global scale. At $468 to $832 a night, you're paying a fraction of what a comparable, highly isolated luxury experience in the Maldives, the Swiss Alps, or the Amalfi Coast would demand. Oman is unequivocally the most underpriced luxury window in the world right now.
And finally, a Persona 5, the digital nomad or solo traveler. The verdict is yes. The monthly reality of spending $5,508 to $2,340 for a high quality of life is a steal. You secure a modern apartment, reliable fiber optic internet from Omantel, and a desk at Make Business Hub. The tourist visa allows for a 30-day stay with simple renewal processes. For solo travelers, the complete absence of violent crime and the deep cultural hospitality provide an unparalleled peace of mind.
There is one warning here, though.
Yes, the single warning for this persona. Muscat possesses zero nightlife culture. If your baseline requirement for a good month abroad involves late-night clubbing and a vibrant bar scene, you will be deeply frustrated here. But if your ideal weekend involves shutting your laptop, driving 2 hours to camp in the silent desert, and returning to a calm, affordable city, Oman is unmatched.
So as we wrap up this massive breakdown of the data, the costs, and the reality of Oman, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. We have talked extensively about the 2026 window closing. We've detailed Vision 2040 and the staggering $13.6 billion being injected into the country to build out this massive infrastructure. Oman is executing this master plan specifically to show the rest of the world how authentic and untouched they are compared to their neighbors.
Yeah.
But here's the paradox you have to consider.
It's a big one.
If Vision 2040 succeeds perfectly, if they successfully carve those luxury resorts into the mountains, if they widen the coastal roads to accommodate fleets of tour buses, and if they actually manage to process millions of new tourists every single year, does the very act of accommodating those masses destroy the untouched isolation that makes Oman so incredibly special right now? By engineering mass access to the authentic, do you inevitably manufacture it? That is why the concept of the closing window isn't just about hotel prices going up. It's about the very soul of the destination operating on a ticking clock. That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.